Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Lights, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 40 of The Captain's Heart. Walking to the lab of the person who made the cube had started uncomfortable. Started uncomfortable. Now aware so many people knew about him and the captain, and their captain, those looks gained new meanings, expectations. But it didn't take long for his attention to move away from those and to the men he was with, and then he'd sort of forgotten. He sort of forgot. Oh, right. That's why, because this was a. That's why I need to change stuff. He sort of forgot there were other people there. So I'm going, started uncomfortably. Uncomfortable now. Well, those look gained new meanings for him, but he didn't take long for his attention to move away from those and to the men he was with, and then he sort of forgot there were other people there. The lab captured his attention. It wasn't messy, but there was the disorder of someone working on multiple projects at once. A table had all sorts of components laid on it. Next to that, tools and another partially built component. A printer worked, and the one next to it was partially disassembled. The woman working there was all business, as if making devices like the cube was her reason for being, instead of simply being something she knew how to do on top of whatever her job was. She took it. When Growler handed it over, they talked, and his tone was, curt was wrong, was the wrong term. Direct, stern. A captain addressing a subordinate, similar to how he addressed Torok. Maybe she was in charge of maintaining the communication equipment. It would explain why she knew about frequencies and how to counter them. Yeah. She set to taking the cube apart immediately, and Jeremy followed Growler out. A few hours, he explained, until she was done. Jeremy hoped and feared they'd go back to his quarter, but instead they went to a part of the ship that felt like historic downtown back home. The thoroughfare was large, much larger than there. It felt too large for the number of people walking through it. But everything on the ship felt like that to him. Growler explained they were within the civilian section of the ship, and this was the mercantile area, with stores catering to their needs and leisure. It amused Jeremy that a merchant ship had such a distinction between the crew and their families, but it matched how ranked was important to them. The few stores he glanced in through the window sold items and equipment. Some seemed to be for grooming, and he had no idea what the others were. I don't need the for. When they returned to the woman's lab, she had something twice the volume for Jeremy. The instructions were the same as what Queric had given him. It would work by itself, although Growler had chuckled at something she said before translating the instruction. Whatever he'd found funny hadn't been included. Growler escorted him to the exit, and Jeremy had found himself reluctant to leave. Beyond knowing Omar and the commander were manipulating him, he enjoyed being in Growler's company, and the idea of sleeping in his bed instead of alone was enticing. But he wasn't here for pleasure. He had a job to do, and he needed his sleep, something he wasn't sure he'd get if he stayed. Because of the delay, the corridors weren't as busy, which made Jeremy wonder if he shouldn't rearrange how he worked. Only spending long enough on the station to sleep and print what he'd need could be excused as him working harder to repair the reactor and have the Kelsirians leave. And that was a horrible thought. Still, it could just be what he told Omar if questioned. He didn't have to work any faster. He could spend the extra time with Growlers, spend as much of it as he could before. Jeremy didn't sleep as well as he'd hoped, but it had nothing to do with ultrasonics or what had been done to him. He woke with the memory of loneliness. Even if he didn't remember the dream, he could work out their theme from that. The cube was cool to the touch, so he'd been protected. Thuruk waited for him at the ship's entrance, as usual, and work proceeded well until they were interrupted. Engineer, Growler greeted him. I need to speak with you. The tone was what he used when speaking to Thuruk, but Jeremy had a suspicion of the reason. He still followed the captain, even when they entered the engineer's office. As soon as the door closed, he rounded on Jeremy, reached for him, grinning, then froze, his expression turning concerned. Jeremy laughed. I'm not going to run off. I saw this coming from the moment you said you wanted to talk to me, Captain. Growler placed a hand on Jeremy's cheek, leaned in, and their lips touched. Jeremy parted them when the tongue probed and moaned, grabbing hold of the other man's neck and pressed. Their tongue exchanged location, and Growler placed a hand on his back, pulling him close. Jeremy tensed when the hardness pressed against his own, but he refused to let the other man pull away. It had been a momentary lapse in his attention. He wasn't ending the kiss on that account. Growler loosened and rumbled. When Jeremy ended the kiss, it was to catch his breath. Those gold eyes peered into his, and he wanted to never look away. When Growler leaned in again, he rubbed his muzzle against his cheek. I have missed you. Yeah, me too. He pulled him to the couch, then they were stretched on it. Isn't the engineer going to be pissed you're using his office to snuggle with me? Alex will understand. It's my understanding he really doesn't like other people touching his stuff. He's going to scream at me for a lot more than us enjoying this couch. You mean me touching his reactor? Among other things. Jeremy searched his face. His injuries are because of the gods. Because the gods meddled. Just barely meddled because of me. And me. He won't scream at you. You are outside our chain of command. But he's going to scream at you, his captain, and my friend. I give those more leeway in how they show their respect to my rank. Jeremy rested his head again on the furry chest. Any idea when he's going to be better? No. I expected him to wake, now that we have found each other. His chuckle was tainted with sadness. I should get back to work. You should remain in my arms. The technicians will look after things. Not after the reactor. It's clear Turek doesn't have their training to repair it. You're going to be stuck here forever if I don't fix it. Growler laughed, but he shook his head when Jeremy stared at him. Shouldn't you be more worried about it not working? I have you. I have nothing to worry about anymore. Lucky you. You don't need to worry either. I have a reactor to repair. And afterward? You take your work seriously. How else should I take it? Lives depend on me doing my job expertly. Antimatter isn't something I can take lightly. Griller searched his face, then helped him out of the couch. I'm letting you go, but I will come back for you. I will come get you once the work shift is over. I can work? No. I won't let you overwork yourself. I will no longer distract you during your shift, but it is the only time you will work. I know Earthers are different, but you are my heart, and I need you to take care of yourself. Jeremy chuckled. Okay, just a shift. But you realize I can't get as much work done if I can't get as much work done as if I worked the way I liked working. But I get to enjoy time with you. There was a ferocity in the words that made Jeremy shiver delightfully. Surprisingly, his stomach did not voice an opinion. Jeremy looked over the reading, his test returned, activated. There clicked key wells and the board lit up. The reading fluctuated with the lights, then stabilized. Another one done. You should be happier about the success. Just in time, Growler said. The shift is ending. Jeremy looked at Torok, who nodded. Not entirely sure he could trust either in this case. He looked around, and the technicians were gathering their tools. Two already leaving. Two already leaving. Shouldn't I stay until the next group arrive? Technicians know how to do their work, Jeremy. If they require constant supervision, Alex would have found others already. He offered Alex his hand. Whoa, whoa, somebody's jumping story. He offered Jeremy his hand. Your shift is over. We are going to eat. Jeremy smiled as the Kelsirians at their table laughed at what the silver-furred female said. Growler opened his mouth to translate, but he shook his head. He suspected that he lacked the context to understand the humor. Growler had introduced them, but Jeremy could no more remember their names than he could pronounce them. They were his friends, he'd understood that much. Only 3 of those he considered his inner circle of friends were absent. One was on her work shift, the other sleeping. Growler promised to introduce them later. The meal was at a restaurant instead of a cafeteria. Instead of choosing from the counter, they'd place their order from their tablets. Jeremy deferred to Growler instead of going through getting each item translated. Their orders, plural, arrived. Small plates of meats, rolled, cubed, and some in fancier shapes, but all small enough to be speared with a claw or Jeremy's finger fork attachment, along with bowls of sauce. This confirmed that it was how they liked their food and not just something the cafeteria did for ease of serving. Without being able to tell which meat and sauce were his and Growler's, and since the others seemed to pick from any plates and bowls, Jeremy speared a chunk of meat from a plate before him and dipped it in the same sauce Growler had used. He smelled the spiciness before putting it in his mouth, so he braced himself, but even then, his face flushed and he panted. Everyone at the table stared in disbelief. This is hot, he gasped. Not bad, but man, is it hot. Growler spoke, grinning, and they responded with more. Disbelief then erupted in laughter. You have proved you are my heart, Growler said with pride. Was this a test? No, but they claim only my heart could find my selection palatable. He rubbed his muzzle against Jeremy's cheek, and the sound the others made was oddly similar to a human's "aww." Jeremy woke with a start, then chuckled at Growler nuzzling his cheek. He took hold of the mane, pulled the head out and up, and kissed him. The growl accompanied the hand on his ass, and before Jeremy had processed what had happened, his crotch was pressed against the other man, and he shoved away. Wrong! Jeremy, I'm sorry. No, he forced his breathing to sleep. To slow. What time is it? He pulled his jacket to him as Growler spoke in Kelsirian and the computer answered. 1868. Jeremy stared at his tablet. 2 in the morning? How? He hurried to put his shirt and jacket on. Jeremy, it's the middle of the night on the station. I need to go. Stay. Sleep here. I can't. What would Omar think if Jeremy didn't return to the station to sleep? The better question was, what would he and the commander do? I'll explain tomorrow after the shift is over. I promise. He ran. And this concludes chapter 40 of The Captain's Heart. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, it is up on Ream Story. If you want to listen to this live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. Links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.